All right, welcome everybody to our webinar for the month, and it's an important topic. I think we've already done one of these. It was a couple months back, but we got a great response from it. I did another one of these at a corporate workshop, and it tends to be one of our more popular talks, so I'm going to dip into it again. Some new information, and the purpose of these workshops is twofold. Obviously, for our practice members who are coming in to get adjusted, we want to offer more information about the corrective and healing process. And a big portion about the whole health and wellness process is that you're first and foremost finding ways to build your internal resistance to stress, and then secondly, finding ways to limit external stress. So if we focus on sleep, this literally covers both of those. Getting more sleep can help to build your body's internal resilience and help you to do a whole host of things that we're going to talk about. In addition to the way you sleep and the environment, all of that can help you to reduce external stress exposure. So sleep is such a huge, important factor that we want to talk about. And something that is also common when I get people who come to their initial consultation, or say it's somebody who's an existing practice member and they're getting adjusted, and they say, I think it's my sleep that is causing the problem. Because when I wake up, there's stiffness in these muscles, I have a stiff neck or I have a stiff back, and I've been through so many pillows and I've tried a new mattress and done all this stuff and nothing seems to be working. The reality is that most often aches and pains that you're experiencing upon waking are the result of habits that have been established during your awake hours that are trying to recover and recoup while you're sleeping. So with that, this whole workshop is to hopefully help you to reframe your thoughts about sleep, and hopefully at the end of this, you have a few tips that you can try literally tonight when you go to bed. And from that then, do that day after day, create a new habit. If you were at our last talk, we talked about habit formation. So some of those tips we covered on our previous talk, if you weren't here, go back, you can access it on YouTube and watch that. And that will help you to take some of what you learned today, create new habits from the workshop on the last one, do it repeatedly over time, and you're just going to feel a lot better. So unlock better sleep. And something that I think is super critical and important to understand, first and foremost, about why sleep is so important. And it's not just because you want to get a good night's sleep, but what does a good night's sleep mean? In people who wear sleep trackers and you're in that good quality sleep, what's happening? Why is sleep such a critical factor? And it boils down to these four components. First and foremost, physical healing. That happens when you're asleep. When you're awake, your body is allocating resources to keep you awake, to get blood flow to the musculature and the organs and all this stuff. So there isn't a lot of repair that happens during our wakeful state. So when you sleep, your body then takes those resources that were allocated to keeping you awake and running things where you're awake and pushes it into that physical healing. And this is, like I alluded to previously, if you wake up in the morning and you have a stiff muscle, a stiff low back, stiff neck, stiff shoulder, something like this, yes, of course, sometimes the pillow, if it's too thick or something like that, which we will cover in just a little bit, it can cause stiff muscle. But a lot of times, that stiffness and tension is the result of the healing process that is taking place while you sleep. Healing, what happens during the healing process? Excess blood flow. If you wake up and there's this excess blood flow in that musculature, what's that going to feel like? It's going to feel stiff. It might feel a little sore. It might feel like you just woke up from a position that was creating all this tension, when in reality, your body is going through that healing process to ultimately help you to feel better. So physical healing is one of the critical components of your overall health and wellness that happens while you sleep. Neurologically, we have memory consolidation. There is so much information, research, literature that's coming out or has been out for years that talks about the importance of brain health and sleep. I have one of the things I talk about with new parents and helping to hopefully console or at least commiserate to a certain extent with new parents is about how difficult it is because of the lack of sleep. And something I always say is that fortunately, lack of sleep affects memory, so you don't even remember the bad times. You just slowly forget about all that. You're not able to consolidate those memories into something, and you only remember the good things. So memory consolidation is important. The more you're able to get into that deep sleep, there will be the brain's ability to take those resources that are otherwise allocated to doing other things and help to consolidate those memories into the parts of your brain which will help you with recall easier. That's why also with kids and people who are not even kids, but people who are in school, it's so critically important to sleep, especially for test preparation. There is a rate of limiting returns on staying up and cramming a bunch of material as opposed to getting a good night's sleep. Getting a good night's sleep, it will help you to recall better the information that you do know as opposed to trying to cram that last minute information. Lymphatic drainage, this is the fourth one on that list. This is something that is happening to a much higher degree when you are sleeping. Now, the lymph system, think of it as the trash collectors inside your body. Excuse me, let me get a sip of water. So the lymph system is something that if you have a foreign antigen, let's say you get COVID and your immune system is sending out all these immune cell responders to track down this foreign antigen, it goes, it breaks down that cell, takes it out of the bloodstream and gets it into your lymph system, and then your lymph is what drags it out. That's why if you have young kids and they're sick, you can kind of feel around their neck and you will feel that there's maybe some small firm nodules. They might be kind of tender to the touch. These are swollen lymph nodes that do happen when kids are sick. Adults, yes, also it does happen, but they're less noticeable because there's more tissue around the neck in adults. And then finally, physiological regulation. And this is something that I want to spend more time talking about because the importance of physiological regulation. If we look at what that means, there's a term that I was exposed to when I started doing research for this type of workshop years ago, and I was exposed to the term diurnal beings. Now, diurnal is something that I should have known or been exposed to. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, hey, what the heck is this? And most often we're exposed to this term through the opposite, which is called nocturnal. So nocturnal animals are animals that are optimized to be awake during the night. Bigger eyeballs, bigger ears, they're able to hunt and track down prey in the dark. And then there are other physiological factors that occur during those awake hours, so they're able to sleep through the day. So that might be due to maybe the prey that they're going after, or the climate. If it's super hot during the day, they don't want to have as much movement, so they're conserving energy. Human beings, we are diurnal beings, meaning that there are things that are optimized when we're awake, and also things that are optimized for when we're sleeping. If it's hormonal regulation, memory consolidation, all these things are physiologically regulated through hormonal balances that happen as a result of us being diurnal beings. Things that should happen during the day, things that happen during the night. And the important rhythm and balance of this rhythm is directly related to something called the circadian rhythm. So you may have heard this term before. The circadian rhythm is that cycle, the balance of being awake and being asleep. One of the most obvious ways that we do get a relationship to our circadian rhythm is when that circadian rhythm is thrown out of whack. And when that circadian rhythm is thrown out of whack, generally it's due to the result of transferring out of your time zone. So I'm sure you have had that experience before, where you travel somewhere, it might be 4 hour, 7 hour, 12 hour time difference. When I go back to visit my family in the United States, that's between a 12 to 14 hour time difference, and jet lag is a direct relationship, a very real feeling of the disruption of the circadian rhythm because of those hormonal changes that are optimized for sleep and awake. I'm sure one of the things that every time with my kids when we go back, we'll have these like wake up parties at 2 a.m. where everybody's just wide awake. And the reason that is because your body does have a cycle and a rhythm. And once you get into that rhythm and disrupt it, it does take time for you to get dialed back in. So this is important. And the biggest thing about this whole talk is helping you to optimize exactly this. If we know how to disrupt it, your circadian rhythm, and throw you out of balance and dysregulation of that physiological cycle, there should also be ways that we can optimize this cycle to lean into that circadian rhythm, to help foster a more balanced response between our hormones that keep us awake and then can help us fall asleep at the appropriate time. So this diagram here that I have on, I'm sure some of you have been looking through it. I like to put it up there because it helps to understand that there are times of the day that are better for certain activities. And some of you might even experience this with your work capacity. Like, oh, I get my best work done right away in the morning. Yeah, if you do have the circadian rhythm dialed, there is going to be certain hormones in your bloodstream that help you to be focused and dialed in the morning. And some of you might feel like, wow, I get this little lull after lunch, and that might be because of the food you're eating, but also because of that circadian rhythm, the hormone influx and balance. And if we go through this, we're looking at the top part of the midnight. So we start here. It's just like a clock. Sorry, I was acquainting myself. But so midnight is at the bottom, noon is at the top. And if we go through and we look at this, there are certain physiological changes that happen at certain times of the day, regardless of the temperature or the climate that you're in. Your body will have changes in body temperature the closer you get to sleep. There will be a melatonin secretion that starts around 9 p.m. Melatonin is the hormone that helps you to feel drowsy and sleepy. Your bowel movements change. You have this deep sleep, which can then optimize your physiological effects, lymphatic drainage, memory consolidation, physical healing. Those things happen. Lower body temperature is a result of just everything slowing down a bit. So then when we start to get into those early mornings, 6 a.m., 6:45, you're going to have a change in your blood pressure. The melatonin secretion stops. So melatonin, you can see that there is this, when we start to get into the evening and then when we start to come in the morning, there's a direct relationship of melatonin production, inhibition and production during those times. So melatonin is one of those hormones that is critically linked to your circadian rhythm, and we want to lean into that. Lean into melatonin. Some people lean into it by artificially stimulating that through taking a supplement. But melatonin is a naturally occurring hormone within your body that you can influence without taking a supplement. There are things that you can do, and it's critically important to figure out how you can optimize that. Because like I said, oftentimes we know about this dysregulation through changing time zones. But if we're in the time zone that we generally live in, how do we lean into leveraging that hormonal balance and change to help us get better sleep and also help us be more awake when we are awake? So let's get into exactly that. I've talked about this a little bit already, but with the sleep support that we want to offer, the biggest component of looking at that is your light exposure. So we'll talk about the challenges to this maybe with shift work or the obvious challenges people might have with schedule. But in general, we're talking about human beings are diurnal beings, meaning that there is literally things that happen during the daylight. We take the sun, the photons come through the sun, they stimulate the back of the retina, and we then it inhibits the melatonin production. When the night comes and the sun starts to go down, it gets darker, there's less stimulation of the photons on the back of our retina, we start to produce melatonin. And melatonin signals to the body that we're getting ready to sleep. So think about this. Think about light exposure and how that is related to your overall wakeful and restful states. So in general, we want less light at night and more light in the morning. It almost seems too simple, But I will tell you, not only from my personal experience, but helping people to get and create new habits, the simpler the habit, or the simpler the idea, or the simpler the task, the easier it is to be consistent with it. Because it just literally takes a little momentary reminder, and then you can participate or step into that habit. So less light at night, more light in the morning. And something that is in a growing body of research that's coming out is talking about the benefits of sunlight exposure upon waking in the morning. So with Singapore, the sun rises, or it starts to get brighter around 6:30, 6:45. I think the sunset actual time is around 7 a.m. So if you go out, even if there's cloud cover, like today is a little gray in the sky and the sun's kind of coming up, if you go out, even with that sunlight, there is more brightness in the ambient environment than any type of light bulb can artificially stimulate. That's like why sometimes when you're in the office all day and you have this artificial light and then you go outside, it still seems so bright, even if there is some cloud cover. Sunlight exposure in the morning will help you to inhibit that melatonin production. So something I recommend with my practice members and people that I talk to at Corporate Talk series, and what I'm recommending to people who are here on this workshop, upon waking in the morning, to the best of your ability, within the first 30 minutes, to go out and do a short 10-minute walk. I know it might seem way too, almost too simple, or you might not have the time, whatever the case is, but there are two things that start to happen. First and foremost, like I've already talked about, sunlight and the photons coming into your eyeball, that will inhibit melatonin production, which then kicks off a myriad of physiological effects to happen while we are awake. So that's one. The other thing is that when you're outside and you're walking, so you're looking at things in the distance, so there's a visual stimulation that comes into your eyeball and moving, you start to change what's happening in your brain. So often people are inundated with stress and anxiety and all the stuff that they have to do from day to day. So one thing we know to be true about neurology and brain activity is that when you're getting the stimulation of the external environment, things from far away coming closer and passing you, it has an effect, and a calming effect on thoughts, anxiety, and kind of down regulates your response right away in the morning. So a short 10-minute walk helps to reset this whole process of being awake and sleep. And then if you can, and this goes to the next extra step. If you can, in those earlier moments of the day, within 60 minutes, to do some type of light, slow, steady state cardio. If you could do a long walk, you could do a slow jog, you could go for a bike ride. But again, this activity will stimulate brain activity to bring you down into a more calm mindset, as well as waking you up. So this you can do obviously on your day-to-day. Like if you literally do this tomorrow morning, you will directly receive physiological benefit from doing that tomorrow. The other time that you can apply this little trick is when you're traveling. Regardless of the time zone that you're in the new time zone, wake up at sunset. If you wake up at sunset, you go outside and you go for a walk, you will have these neurological and mental impacts as well as those physiological impacts. You can reset your circadian rhythm by getting sunlight into your eyeballs in the morning. So that's inhibits melatonin production. By getting some type of physical movement, which changes brainwave patterns, help to wake you up and get focused. And that then helps to bring you into that balanced circadian rhythm, even in a new time zone. This is something that I do when I travel, and it's extremely helpful. Instead of taking 4 or 5 days to get regulated, it can happen much more quickly, maybe 2 to 3 days. A lot of my practice members who travel around the world for work, they swear by getting into the gym. The first day you go to the new country, get to the gym on that first day to help bring you more balance into that. So sunlight exposure upon waking. The next thing is to have warm light into your eyes in the evening. So in the house, or you want to make sure that you're able to dial back some of the intensity of light, because as we know, as it gets dark, that stimulates melatonin production. Melatonin is that hormone that helps to regulate that circadian rhythm. So towards the end of the day, you want to start to turn those lights down on a dimmer. If you can match it to when the sun is setting, that's excellent. If you don't have dimmers on your light bulbs, something you can do is get a bulb. Like I have in my house, Philips Hue light bulbs. I'm not sponsored by them. I just think they're a great product. I know there are other products out there, but the Philips Hue light bulb can range from bright white light to warm yellow light and all colors in between. So something we will do, what I do personally when I wake up in the morning, I turn on bright white light on those light bulbs, which gets that stimulation, and then I go outside. In the evening, we use the warm yellow light and turn it down dim, which can stimulate melatonin production. So warm light in the evening. And then the third point on this slide, and I'm sure some of you have been seeing it there and you're wondering, how in the heck can I ever do this? No phone use an hour before sleeping. So this is so critical because of what happens when we're looking at our phone. The phone helps to inhibit melatonin production. So a lot of times people will say, well, I use my phone, it'll help me get tired so that I can sleep better, something like this. The reality is that although you might be physically fatigued, what is happening neurologically and in your brainwave patterns, they are stimulated. So although you might be getting tired and you fall asleep, you will have sort of this high octane brainwave function that will prevent you from getting the optimal sleep. So doing your best to decrease any type of screen exposure at least an hour before you go to sleep. So with that, one of the most common tips that I provide for people, or that I recommend for people to try, and this is something that I personally started doing about 3 years ago, is to start to charge your phone outside of your room. And if you say, well, I need my phone to read, or I use it for an alarm, I do think that those excuses are exactly that. They're excuses. You can find alternatives to those things. You can get a Kindle if you want to read, or a book, and you can just I bought a $10 little alarm clock that sits right next to my bed. But what happens is that this habit, when you I plug in my phone before, like right after dinner, outside of my room, and that then already signals to the body that we're starting the process of sleep. We are habitual creatures, human beings are. And the more we lean into habit, the better. Routine. I mean, with kids, it's something, if you want them to do something, do the same thing over and over and over again, and they will start to do it. Repetitiveness is what breeds habit. So plugging in your phone outside, and I will say that I don't want to read my phone at night. I don't wake up in the morning and check my phone first thing, which are all things that I used to do. And this isn't just purely me. The research that has been done around this, they talk about how effective simply putting your phone outside your room, how that effective can be for increasing the quality of your sleep. So with that, we lead into the next recommendations for, I already talked about these three. Those back here on the sleep support. So just to reiterate those three: less at night, more in the morning. And again, this leans into the main hormone, what that is melatonin, which helps you to be drowsy and asleep at night. And when it inhibits melatonin production, you'll be more alert and awake. Other things about the three main factors about what I look at in creating habits and routine around sleep. You want to try and have some type of routine that can help prepare your body for sleep. And when we do that, intense exercise, you want to try to be done with intense exercise at least 3 hours before sleep. Try to not eat food, or try to be done eating 2 hours before sleep, and then no screen time 1 hour before sleep. The thing with this is I know that there can be limitations with your schedule, but the more you start to create a conscious pattern, when you do have the time, the more easily you can start it is to create a new habit around that. So think 3, 2, 1. So 3 hours exercise, 2 hours eat, 1 hour you are not using your screen. So if you think about it and look at what I've been talking about this entire time, none of it actually has to do with your sleep environment at all. Nothing about the sleeping position, the best pillow, the best mattress, the temperature, or the light and darkness, or whatever the case is. Because so much of what, it doesn't, if you start to get into a habit of appropriate exercise before sleeping, of getting meal and then decreasing phone time, it literally doesn't matter if you have a firm or a soft mattress. Yes, optimizing the firmness of your mattress is going to help you get an even better night's sleep, but there are things you can do right now without changing anything of your sleep environment, which is going to increase the quality of your sleep. And all it has to do is try to optimize our normal physiology, what our bodies were designed to do, leaning into it and not artificially stimulating something, not taking a pill, a sleeping medication, or trying to get the right sleep number bed, or whatever the case is. If we do just lean into what our bodies are normally designed to do. In saying that, I do know that one of the most common questions I get is, what's the best pillow? What's the best mattress? What's the best position? So what we want to talk about in regards to that is support. You think about what is optimal anatomical position. So if we look at the human body and we think of anatomical position, it's standing with palms out turned like this. And sleeping then would be, the best position for sleeping would be on your back in that position. Now, not everybody can sleep comfortably on your back. Let's say that you have increased roundedness in your upper back, so when you sleep, it creates craning in your neck. That's possible. If you have roundedness through your low back, and then you sleep in the bed and your pelvis turns and creates extra tension into your low back, that can cause stiffness or tension, and that can wake you up in the middle of the night. So there are a few things that you have to consider. First and foremost, your postural presentation, and also what the best sleeping position for you is, the one that provides the most comfort to where you will sleep the best through the night. So it's impossible for me to say, okay, the best position for you is on your back, but somebody has been sleeping on their stomach for 20 years and they sleep great. And then they try and sleep on their back and they don't get any sleep. That means that the back sleeping isn't the best position for you. So there are ways to optimize your body position for however you sleep. There are good sleep positions regardless of how you sleep, and bad sleep positions. And it has most often to do with exactly what we're saying here, sleep support. How do you support your body in that optimal position in order to create the least amount of tension in parts of the spine? So if we look at a side sleeper, the top picture there from the left to the right, the person on the right just has too thick of a pillow. And if your pillow is too thick, it's going to create craning into the neck and into the mid-back and even the low back as the spine has to twist. You want to try to think about keeping your spine in as optimal of a position as possible. So with the side sleeper, you want a little thicker pillow, which raises your head up so you're not too far down, and it's not too thick to where it's straightened this way. In addition to that, putting a pillow between your knees can alleviate some of the tension from the pelvis collapsing down on itself. So again, making sure that you have the appropriate support. Now, if you do sleep on your back, which again, from an anatomical position, there's the least amount of tension, you still need the support of having that neck supported in addition to potential tension that comes through the low back. So if you sleep on your back and you do feel low back pain, putting a little pillow under your knee will definitely help. General guidelines: sleeping on your back, you usually would lean towards a more firm mattress. Sleeping on your side generally would lean more towards a softer mattress. But again, these are blanket recommendations. Unless I see your posture specifically. If you are a practice member and you want to discuss this on your next visit, bring it up. I'm happy to talk about what I think is best for you and recommend a few companies that provide some excellent quality material in order to give you the best sleep support. And the reality is you don't have to spend $10,000 on a mattress. My current sleep situation, I have an $800 mattress, which is a latex foam mattress, and it has a 4-inch down feather topper. So it's firm. That latex mattress is firm. The feather topper adds me some comfort, so I get support and comfort. And that whole solution cost me it's under $1,000. And I know that can be a lot of money to some people. I definitely understand that. There are options which are more cost effective, and of course you can spend more money than that. The reality is that it's finding the right equipment that is good for your spine. And that comes through sometimes a dialogue through your healthcare provider and obviously somebody who is selling mattresses. Unfortunately, sometimes people who are selling mattresses just want to sell you what they have. So ask questions about that as well. So obviously sleep support and how you sleep is important. But waking up in the morning, remember, if you wake up and you have neck pain, it doesn't mean that your pillow is wrong. It might be that your body is going through this recuperative process where there's this physical healing that takes place during that time frame. So yes, try to optimize your position, but more importantly, lean into optimizing physiological function, that circadian rhythm, that sleep-awake cycle. Stimulate the production of melatonin by darkness exposure, inhibit melatonin production by getting exposure to light. And I will say that about your optimizing sleep. I'm just going to go back a few slides here to this first one. Now, if we look at optimizing sleep and we're looking at environment, it is best for your sleep environment to be generally colder than you would expect. So you probably, I know, keeping your aircon too cold might not seem comfortable, but if we're leaning into the regulation of physiological function, the cooler body temperature helps to optimize some of these other body system function. So sleeping between 23 and 20 degrees Celsius is optimal. Also, keeping your room as dark as possible. You don't want any type of stimulation into your eyeball. If it's leaving a nightlight on or having the TV on or whatever the case is, again, you may be asleep, but it can have an effect on brainwaves, and it can have some type of stimulation, and it can disrupt that cycle, that circadian rhythm. So everything that I really want to talk about is how do we leverage this circadian rhythm? How do you get dialed into the natural biological processes which have been evolved over a millennia to make us diurnal beings, meaning that we do the most productive work when we're awake, and so that our body is then optimized to increase physiological function when we sleep. And those physiological function, again, physical healing, memory consolidation, lymphatic drainage, and then the regulation of our hormonal balances. So that's it. I do appreciate the time for you to come in today, or coming here and signing on, logging on to be with us. And the biggest thing, if I can give you 2 things to try literally tonight, first and foremost, try to get your phone outside of your room. If you already do that, fantastic. Secondly, upon waking in the morning, get light stimulation into your eyeballs with some type of slow, steady cardio, which could be as simple as walking for 10 minutes. And if you start to do this, and you do this repeatedly over the course of a week, you will notice that you're sleeping better because you're leaning into that physiological process of the melatonin production and inhibition. And the more you do that, the better it will get. So that's literally my biggest suggestion for people who want to optimize their sleep, is just doing those 2 things, because literally you don't have to change the time you go to bed or when you wake up. If you have kids and you wake up in the middle of the night, still wake up and the first thing you do is get a little bit of slow, steady state cardio with light in your eyeballs and move your body. It can sometimes reduce the negative impact of a bad sleep in the night. So with that, I do appreciate you being here. You can scan the QR code and follow us on Instagram. We post a lot of this content on there, and also you get access to our different links to the YouTube channel where we post these talks that we've done previously, in addition to other educational material on how to do everything from, take care of back pain, tight hip flexors, stretch out your shoulders from sitting at the desk. We have one coming out soon about plantar fasciitis. All these questions that I'm continually getting from patients, we try to put up in content to help people get access to it when they don't have access to getting into the clinic. Our next workshop is going to be at Life Chiropractic Centre, our Joo Chiat location at Katong Point on June 21st, 24th at 7:30 p.m. And this is going to be how to increase the health of your spine through very simple exercises. Stronger spine, happier, healthier you. So that's what we'll be covering on the 24th. If you're one of our practice members, we'll be happy to see you there. If you're not, you're still welcome to come. We enjoy having people from our community regardless of their exposure to us. So, a little short but concise 30-minute workshop today. If you do have any questions, you can type in the chat and I'd be happy to answer those specific questions now. If not, have a great rest of your day, pushing through Tuesday here, and happy to head into the midweek. Thanks for coming today. We'll talk again soon. All right, no questions.